What's going on, everybody? It's Wednesday. Wednesday's Q&A day. You know I love Q&A day a bunch. So much going on right now. I've got, we're back at work. We've been back for a little over a week after our winter break. I'm helping to coach Lucy's high school soccer team. So from the time school ends, I race over there and I help out with coaching for a couple of hours. And then I've got the whole YouTube thing going on. We've got some issues with our dog is winding down, and she's super old and needs lots of assistance. So it's been kind of crazy around the Miller home recently. So bear with me if I take a little bit longer to respond to some comments than I normally do, because it's important to me and I'm going to do it. And I'm just not as on top of things as I am right now, just because there's a ton going on. But hey, we all have a ton going on, right? So here's the deal. This week, you all hammered out some great questions. Great questions. I literally, what I do is when I read through them, I get a first look and I go, yeah, this is one that I think is worth using. I'm going to use this question. I definitely want to use this question. And then I looked at my definitely want to use question list this week, and there were like 12. So what did that leave me with? It left me with 12, but I'm not going to do 12 questions. So then I looked, and a couple of the questions kind of had some overlap. So I took two of them and combined them into one response because they were similar. So what that means is there are going to be 7 questions I'm using this week, but 5 responses. So a couple of the questions, 2 questions to 1 response. You'll see when we get there. If you have a question for an upcoming video, please do not hesitate to ask down below in the comments. Simply type your question. I always look forward to hearing what you all are interested in. Let's go ahead and take a look at this week's first question.
When grading an auto card with PSA, there is the option to get the auto graded as well as the card. I don't see a lot of cards with both grades, so wondering if the hobby is basically saying an auto is an auto, the condition of the card is what matters. I don't want a sloppy auto, but I don't want to put a premium on a card with both grades. Love to hear your thoughts.
All right, so this is a very timely question. It's something we definitely need to talk about, because one of the things that's been growing in popularity recently is autographed cards. And I think part of that comes from rarity, and part of it comes from it's a big portion of the modern hobby, right? The modern hobby is tons and tons of autographed cards. And one of the things that the companies have been doing is putting some vintage guys that are still alive autographing cards into the current product. So it's definitely brought autograph collecting to the forefront. And then as people are looking for rarer and rarer things, it's perfectly normal to look for autographed cards. So this is something that we all have to just think about a little bit as we move forward. So the question is about PSA grading. So if I send my card in to PSA, there are multiple options. You can get the autographed authenticated and the card graded. You could get the card and the autographed graded. You could get the card authenticated and the autograph graded. So what should the focus be? Now, I think it always boils down to your personal preference. So I certainly, for me personally, I don't know how much I care about an autograph grade. And one of the reasons I don't know how much I care about an autograph grade is because so many autographs that aren't really that good get good autograph grades. Like, I've seen some cards where the pen is streaky, or you can see that they fumbled a little bit in the signature, but it still gets like a 10. And you're like, if we're being honest here, that's not a 10. So the autograph grade doesn't mean much to me personally, because it doesn't seem like they take it super seriously. With that said, it matters. When you're deciding what to do, by far the most desirable by the community is the dual autograph. The card graded, I'm sorry, not the dual autograph, the dual graded. The card graded and the autograph graded. And here's why. So many people are way into the PSA set registry. It's like that's their place to showcase their hobby. They send links to friends to show off their collection and share it with other people. People love the PSA registry. Now, I've never posted a card on the PSA registry, but some people are all about it. And here's the deal. In order for your autograph card to be part of the PSA set registry, it has to be dual graded. It has to be card graded and autograph graded. As a result, there's a much higher demand for dual graded cards. So from just a supply and demand point of view, it makes sense to me, even if the autograph isn't great, I would get the card dual graded. Now you say, but it doesn't matter because I'm not selling it, I'm keeping it. Sure, but you never know what's gonna happen. You never wanna give away a value. So, there might be something happens where, unexpected life event happens and you're not gonna have that card for your whole life. Or your family member down the road who receives it wants to maximize the money from it. Why leave value on the table? So you're asking my opinion. Now, it doesn't mean it's the right answer. It's just my opinion. If I'm submitting a card to PSA that has been autographed, I'm personally getting it dual graded because it adds value because there's more demand for the dual grade than the single grade. That's my take.
Have you ever thought about buying or getting into some TCGs? I love sports cards, and when we were kids, sports cards were the rage. Nowadays, I'd say Pokemon cards are the rage for the youth and will be nostalgic for them when they get older. Pikachu will never tear his Achilles. A Black Lotus will never get into trouble with the law. Seems to be decent investments if you're into it.
So the simple answer to this one, is no. I've personally never thought about buying TCG cards. There's no doubt that Pokemon is big, really big, and growing. And it's partly growing because it's really kind of worldwide. A lot of sports cards are more regional, but it seems like Pokemon and other TCG cards, there is a worldwide appeal, meaning there's a worldwide demand. But have I ever thought about it? I haven't. Now, there's a couple reasons why I haven't. Number one, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It's like when I was a kid, there were certain video games. There would be Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or Madden. And it was people would get good at them and then they would be really, really good and they would just keep getting better. And there were certain games where if I didn't get in early, it was really hard to ever catch those people. It was really, really hard to ever catch up the amount of knowledge to understand what was happening. So I was a big Madden guy. So as a kid, I played Madden over and over and over and over. I didn't play a lot of Mortal Kombat and I didn't play a lot of Street Fighter. I played the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, and so I was pretty good at that, but that didn't have a Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3, the continuation of it. It's really hard when somebody has a huge lead to catch up. And quite frankly, I don't understand TCG cards. And I feel like I'm so far behind because I just have never gotten into them. I'm way behind. It's too much to consider. And if I'm being honest, it's not my thing. I don't understand how Pikachu could be intriguing to someone. Now, there are people who love that stuff. Good for them. That's great. It's not for me. See, part of what I love about sports cards, is learning the history along the way. So, you start looking at the 33 Gaudy set and you start going through some of the names and you go, Lefty Grove, great card in that set. Rogers Hornsby, great card in that set. As you're looking into the card, and is this a card I want to add to my collection, you start learning and researching about the player and the history of these actual historical athletic figures is really interesting to me. It's not just interesting about them as athletes, but as them as people. Like, I read a biography on Ted Williams when I was in the 6th grade. And when I read that biography, I was as intrigued with Ted Williams, the pilot, the war hero, as I was him, the baseball player. And I was as intrigued in his obsession with hunting and fishing as I was with him as a baseball player. So I love athletics, but I also like learning about history of historical figures. There's no history that would interest me about Pikachu. And I keep saying Pikachu, but I don't know I don't know anything about those things. So there's no history to it. It's all like, I don't even know. Do they have a history? I don't even know. It's not my thing. It's some people's thing, and that's great. I think having a healthy hobby where you're learning about supply and demand, where you're learning about, talking to people and making deals and trading and all the things about this hobby are great. And if somebody else's appeal is some sort of, fictional character, that's cool, but it's not for me. I'm about the historical character. So I would much rather collect non-sport cards on guys like Albert Einstein and Abraham Lincoln and, Paul Revere than I would collect on a made-up person. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right that you don't have to worry about, somebody breaking the law or somebody getting hurt. It's safer in that regard. It's just not the appeal for me.
I have a question and I'm interested in your take on. You talk a lot about eye appeal and buying PSA SGC ones that look sharp. I am wondering if there are circumstances under which you'd buy a card, even if the eye appeal was not quite what you'd like it to be. In other words, would you rather buy, say, a very rare pre-war card now, even if the appeal wasn't great, so you could own it sooner? Or would you prefer to wait and pick one up when you have the budget to buy a nicer one? I have just gotten back into the hobby after cleaning out my late parents' home and finding lots of my childhood cards. I graded a few and now have become addicted to the PSA registry. I have begun buying some Hall of Fame player cards and have just completed the Ernie Banks base set, 1954 to 1971. I'm wondering if you had the choice, would you spend money to acquire all the cards of a Hall of Fame legend, or would you just save the money and purchase the rookie card for those players? I'm asking that because I had the majority of the Willie Mays and Hank Aaron cards, but not the rookies. Should I sell all those cards and fund the rookies with that money? Thanks again.
All right. So those two questions I feel like have a lot of overlap. So instead of just picking 5 questions, I'm like, these questions I feel like I can kind of answer with the same sort of response. So as a result, I chose both of them. So to answer both of these questions, first off, I don't know if I've ever said people should target PSA 1s. I don't know if I've said that as much as I've said I'm totally down to buy lower grade cards. Now, have I ever bought a 1? I don't think I've ever bought a 1. I've bought a lot of 2s. I own some 1.5s that I sent in and got graded 1.5s. I don't think I have a 1, and I don't think that I've ever bought a 1. I might be mistaken, but I don't think so. Mostly that 2 2.5, 3 is kind of the sweet spot that I go. Not because that's the grade that I target, but because there tends to be pretty nice looking cards, in my opinion, that are in that grade range. So when they assign a card a 2, I go, so this is better than a lot of low grade cards. It's better than all the 1s, and there's a lot of those, all of the 1.5s. So let's take a look. And I'll look and I go, how is this only a 2? I have a bunch of cards that are 2s, and I'm like, I have no idea how this is a 2. And then people say, well, Greg, they just crack them out. I don't want to crack them out. Why would I crack them out? I'm not selling them. I'm keeping them. I have no interest in cracking them out and spending money and time to get them regraded when I like the card and it's in an undergraded holder. The undergraded holder is what made it affordable. So to the question though, would I rather have a really, really beat up copy, or would I rather have wait and get a nice looking copy? For me, I don't have a strong appeal for a really, really beat up copy. And for everybody, that might mean something different. You know, if there's paper loss across his face, I'm not interested. If there are multiple creases through a player's face, that's not really my thing. Now, other people, they just want to have the card, just have the card. The condition is irrelevant, and I totally respect that. Because guess what? Having a copy with a crease through the face is still better than not having a copy. But to your question, would I rather just wait a little bit and buy a little bit of a nicer copy that allows me to have that eye appeal that I need? See, what I find distracting on a card might be different than what someone else finds distracting on the card. Like for me, paper loss on their face is, I can't do it. I just can't do it. A corner that's missing, like completely missing. I don't mind rounded. Rounded's fine. But it's like gone. I can't really do that. That's just not my thing. But paper loss on the back, to me, isn't that big a deal. You know, a little bit of paper loss on the back is not a big. I have several cards that have some paper loss on the back. So that's kind of my take. I would rather wait and get a little bit of a nicer copy than just go, I need one. I'm going to go get it. I'm going to get anything I can afford. But that's just me. It doesn't make it the right answer. Again, this is Greg's opinion. This is Greg's collection. But if you're all about getting 1s in any condition, hey, I got nothing wrong with that. It's just not my thing. I want cards that when I look at it, there's nothing on it that is distracting to me. Now, to the second question, which I think has a lot of overlap, which is collecting player runs versus collecting rookie cards. Now, let me first say, I've long been an advocate for second and third and fourth year cards. For a long time, I've said second year cards are undervalued. Like the fact that a rookie card might be 5 times or more expensive than the second year card seems like a very, very extreme drop off. It seems like an extreme drop off from a first year card to a second year card. You know, if I can get a Hank Aaron in a 1 rookie card for, let's just say, I don't know, $1,500. But I can get a second year card in a 1 for like 150, maybe, well, depending on the condition, 200, 250 for a really nice one. That's like that's an insane drop off. So I've never really understood that drop off. That said, it depends on the card. It depends on the card. Would I rather have the player run or would I rather have the card? What I want in my collection right now, and I've mentioned this recently, I've been doing a lot of consolidating. I've been taking a lot of smaller cards and selling them to be able to purchase bigger cards that I've always wanted. I'm currently in a place right now where it's more about the quality of the cards in my collection than the quantity of the cards. Because with all due respect, if I have 1,000 cards in my collection that are, you know, say good cards, I'm not going to look at 1,000 cards. It's just, I'm not, there are some I'm going to look at a lot, and there's some I'm hardly going to look at. They're going to be in a box, and I'm not going to look at them. And so what I've tried to do recently is focus specifically on the cards I've always wanted but never been able to have. For example, I've always wanted to have that Jim Brown rookie card. I sold some of my other Jim Brown cards to buy one. I've wanted for a long time to have a 48 Bowman Warren Spahn. I sold some other cards to buy one. I've been buying cards that are cards I've wanted and not been able to afford because I was busy buying less expensive stuff. I could see someone having an amazing collection with no rookie cards and just collecting the second card through the last card. I could totally see how someone would have that appeal, because in a lot of cases you can buy for the price of the rookie card, and I've done multiple videos on this, for the price of the rookie card, in a lot of cases you can buy every other card of that player and have money left over. Or you could have the rookie card. I've had people I've had people do videos about how I'm a meatball because I say rookie cards are overrated and you should be buying second and third year cards. And that's never what I really said. What I was saying is second year cards are cool too, and third year cards are cool too. It doesn't mean rookie cards aren't cool. It just means these other cards are also cool. So it depends on the person. Now for me, at the moment, I'm kind of into buying the cards that I've never been able to buy. And the grail term is overused. But the goal cards that I've wanted for a long, long time, like that Jim Brown rookie card, right? Those are the types of cards I'm at the point in my life, I'm ready to trade out some of the stuff that I like for the stuff I've wanted for a really long time. So that's what I'm currently doing. So if you ask Greg on the, middle of January of 2024, what does he recommend? Well, what I'm doing is selling some of my other cards to buy the premium stuff. And my definition of premium stuff might be different than someone else's. That's my take. But if you want to be a player-run person, that's cool, that's fine, that's great. Always buy what makes you happy, not what makes anyone else happy. And right now, what makes me happiest are kind of the gold cards that I've wanted for my whole life.
I've seen a lot of videos on grading with the pros and cons of the four main grading companies. A lot of videos say, if you're not selling cards and don't care about the added value, choose whatever grading company you want. I like CGC, but always see that their resale prices are very low. CGC grading fees are almost half the cost of PSA. I don't care now, but what about the future? What if I decide to sell off in 10 years or pass away? Am I leaving my significant other with a headache because I chose CGC? This is always a dilemma for me.
Here we are. Another impossible question that there's no right or wrong answer on. There is not a wrong answer or a right answer as to what you do here. Now, some people would say, oh, if you go with PSA, that's the wrong answer. And some people would say, if you go with SGC, that's the wrong answer. Someone would say, if you go with anyone other than PSA or SGC, that's the wrong answer. I don't necessarily feel that way. See, I've said for a long time that we need competition in the grading market. The reason that the companies are innovating, the reason they're improving in their turnaround time again, and their prices are coming down again, and the technology that they're using to improve the grading is improving, is because there's competition. If there was only one company, none of that would be happening because they wouldn't have to do it. It would be high profit. It would be, low overhead for them, high profit for them, high prices for them. And some people say, well, that is what is happening. And then to a certain extent, that's true. So here's my take on this. We are one scandal away from any company losing like massive, share of the market. One scandal. If they, and again, I don't even want to start speculating, but if we start finding out that there were some, special treatments going on, people are yelling at the screen. There is special treatment going on. Okay, maybe. I don't know. But if there was, some sort of lawsuit or widespread acceptance of corruption that is proven to be a fact, it could really hurt one of these companies. I mean, there have been a lot of major companies that have had major PR hits that affected them for a long time. I mean, I could just throw a dart at the wall and pick one, but, something like Exxon. Remember the Exxon Valdez? If you grew up around when I did in the 80s, and the oil spill and all of the pictures that would come out about all of the oil and the animals that had been killed and all those sorts of things. And I don't know what it's like in other parts of the country, but in California, I don't remember the last time I saw an Exxon gas station. Now, they still have Exxon is still a company, and Exxon is still a highly profitable company, but they've rebranded it, right? Do you remember when there was that attack on and I'm forgetting the name of it. Anyways, there was the attack where the guy put all the explosives in the Ryder truck, the Ryder moving truck, and Oklahoma City bombing. Timothy McVeigh, I think it's Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City bombing. And he blew up the building. And then it was all about, he used a Ryder truck. And it's like, I don't know about you, but out where I live, I don't see Ryder trucks. Now, did Ryder go out of business or did they rebrand? I don't know that either. But it doesn't take a lot to completely tarnish a brand. Remember the Wendy's fingertip incident in the chili? And somebody said they found the fingertip in the chili of Wendy's, and then it came out to find out that a person planted it in there. And anyway, it hurt Wendy's a lot. So, how did I get to Wendy's? Here I am at Wendy's. My point is that no company, regardless of how big of a lead you have, is bulletproof. Something could happen to PSA that could knock them off their perch. Will it happen? I don't know. Now, as far as what you should or shouldn't do, that's for you to decide. Personally, I pick companies to submit to that I believe are the best for my situation. Now, I've submitted a lot of cards to PSA, and I have submitted a lot of cards to SGC. And at this moment, if I were going to submit cards, I would almost for sure submit them to SGC. But I also have a few cards right now that I've thought about submitting to PSA. And so why? It kind of depends on the card. Like my vintage stuff especially, I'm totally content with SGC. Their resale price is coming up a lot. It's catching up to PSA. I think it is going to catch PSA at some point. I think that, the other companies, again, there are pros and cons, but for me, I'm PSA or SGC. And right now I lean SGC unless it's something I kind of feel like I have to do to PSA. Will you regret it? I don't know. I mean, say PSA buys out SGC and then a scandal comes out about PSA. Then what happens? Then who's left? So we can't tell the future. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen and what's going to unfold. But if all things being equal, I think the company that is the best customer service, very affordable, consistent grading, great turnaround time, is SGC. So for me right now, if I were to send cards in, I would heavily lean toward SGC. Have I ever considered sending the cards to anyone other than SGC or PSA? Personally, I haven't. Part of it is the resale value, even though I'm not planning on selling stuff. I'm still PSA or SGC, but I've not considered it. To me, at the moment, there's two companies that I would consider spending money to have slab, authenticate, and grade my cards. There's two companies that I think have enough reputation by the majority of the collecting community that I'm gonna get return on what my card is worth. And that's PSA and SGC. If somebody chooses other than that, doesn't mean they're wrong, but that's my take. Last questions, there's two of them right here.
I have submitted cards to PSA 3 times for grading. The first 2 times I felt like the grades were fair. The last time was a different story. Out of the 8 cards submitted, only 1 got a grade I was happy with. 3 of the cards got an N5, altered stock instead of a grade. All 3 of these cards I personally pulled out of packs years ago. They have not been altered at all. Can you explain what might be going on here? I don't deal with graded cards. I want to make sure I understand though. If a card comes back from the grading company as altered, does it always mean someone did something to it?
All right, so super timely question, super interesting question. First, if my card comes back altered, does that mean it was definitely altered? Well, from the first of those 2 questions, it sounds like not. It sounds like it doesn't necessarily have to be altered to be considered altered. But if it comes back altered, then that grading company believes it to have been altered. I guess it's possible that it doesn't mean it's altered. There are also certainly cards that have been altered that are in graded slabs. Like there are certain cards, there's no doubt about it, that were altered and it wasn't caught and they have grades on them. 100% that has happened. You know, the grading companies, they don't know what has and hasn't happened. All they have is the evidence of the card. And if they can't detect that something happened, then what are they supposed to do? And they have a lot of technology that helps, but there's certainly things that get by. And there's a lot of people say, well then, you know, grading as a whole is done if they can't even detect altered cards. And there is certainly an impossibility of knowing every card that's ever been altered that comes through their line. So what does that mean? Well, my buddy Adam at Splendid Sports Cards, he just did a really good video on the difference between authentic cards and authentic altered. See, some people, they don't want a number grade. They send their card in just to get authenticated, not to get a numeric grade. And so he goes in there and it gets authenticated. Yes, this is a real card, and then it gets encapsulated in the holder. But that doesn't mean that the card wouldn't receive a grade. And so he shared his experience. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. It's a great video that Adam did. So altered and authentic are possibly different. There's authentic altered, and then there's just authentic. Authentic altered again means they believe it to have been altered. So does that mean it was for sure altered? Not necessarily, again, because of that first question. So how is it possible that they would think that a card was altered even though nothing was altered? It could be anything. You know, you said you pulled the card from a pack. I didn't alter it. What happened? Well, let me give you an example. Back in the day, when we would put a card in a case, we would use the screw downs. And some of those screw downs didn't have a spot for the card to really go. So what happened is you would you would screw the card down so tight to keep it there that it would actually, when you took the card out, the card would either be squished and it would change it because it squished it, it spread it out because it pressed it for so long. The other thing that happened, and I had this happen with some of my screw down cards, is when you take it out, sometimes a part of the card, like the picture, is kind of pulled off by the screw down. So the card has a little bit of paper loss. So because it has paper loss, it's squished, it was altered. It doesn't mean you tried to alter it, but that is maybe what they caught, is that it was too thin, it was pressed, it was, because they might think, oh, you're pressing it to try to get, wrinkles out. Or you're pressing it to try to, you trimmed it and then you're pressing it to try to get it a little bit larger so that it meets the minimum size requirement. Those things are all possible. Is that what happened? I don't know. Here's the other thing. If you go through a box of 1957 Commons and you pull them straight from packs and you have a stack that high and you line them all up, they're not flush. They're all cut slightly different sizes. They would be jagged. It would be a jagged edge. If you took some 2023 Prism cards and you line those up, it is square as can be. They are, the edges would be perfectly in line, the whole stack of cards, because the production is like, it's 70 years newer than those cards back in the 50s. So because of that, there are some cards that were cut a little too big and some cards that were cut a little too small. So that's where the minimum size comes in. There could be a card you literally pulled from a pack and it comes back minimum size, but there's no evidence that they can tell that says it was trimmed, but it's not the size it should be. So then you're like, well, that doesn't seem right, that it gets an authentic grade with a minimum size as the qualifier when the card came straight from a pack. I mean, my buddy Orlando at A Collector's Dream, he has a beautiful 1952 mantle. I mean, the thing is spectacular. He sent it to PSA, came back minimum size, sent it to SGC, came back minimum size. So nobody detected any sort of shenanigans, but the card is smaller than it's supposed to be. So he has this beautiful mantle, but he can't get a numeric grade. And if you saw this card, it is unbelievable. And it's probably the way it came out of a pack because nobody can detect that anything happened. It's a difficult topic, and it's a complex topic. And it's a topic of altered cards that has recently been a lot of the talk of the town in the card community. And I give a lot of that credit to my buddy John Mangini. John Mangini has been saying for a while that if grading companies cannot catch altered cards, if they can't catch it, then what is the point of grading companies? And if you could send a card in for a grade and it gets a grade one time, and then the next time it gets a different grade, and the next time it gets a different grade, then why are we still sending cards in? And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's kind of what he has been saying. And the whole altering cards and what is and isn't acceptable in altering cards. Like, if there's a little bit of wax from there on the card and you take like a t-shirt and you just rub it on there and the wax slightly comes off, is that altering a card? What about a corner who's flipped up a little bit and you press it down? Is that altering a card? Is cutting a part of the card off altering a card? Most people would say yes. Is adding color to a 71 Topps card altering a card? Most people would say yes. I think, is getting Kurt's Card Care kit and using the solution and using the kit to try to take a wrinkle out altering a card? Some people would say yes, some people would say no. And then my buddy Dave at Blue Jacket 66 recently came out and he said, how is altering cards, like, what is it altering a card? What isn't? Like, just because it gets an authentic, because it's altered, doesn't mean it's not a great card, doesn't mean it's not collectible. So Dave said, John, let's sit down and talk. And Dave reached out to me. I don't know why he chose me. I'm so honored. But Dave said, I want to have a debate, but a discussion with John Mangini on altered cards and what is and isn't acceptable and what's happening and the issues of it. And Greg, what would you think about being the moderator, being the host? And I'm like, yeah, it's a topic that the community needs to talk about. So we're going to talk about it. So on January 31st at 9 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, we're going to have those two guys with me on a live stream. And we are going to be talking about what are the rules of altered cards, what's acceptable, what's not, what's our position on altered cards. And I'll be honest with you, those two guys have legendary collections. I mean, these guys are two of the best collections out there. And they've been doing this a really, really long time. And I'm just going to be, I'm going to be like, Bob Costas sitting back and I'll say, hey, Muhammad Ali, what do you think? And Dave's going to respond. And then I'm going to say, hey, Jesse Owens, what do you think? And then I'll let Mangini respond. And I might give a few opinions, but I'm mostly there to facilitate this thing. But show up to that, share your questions and your thoughts and your opinions in the chat. It's gonna be a big live. I have only hosted one live, and I was the only person on it. This is gonna be my second live I've ever hosted, the first time with a guest. And I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome. And by the way, if you have a question for next week's episode, simply type it in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you're interested in. I can't wait until next week's episode.